There are television shows that entertain you, and then there are television shows that raise you. Growing Pains was the second kind. For 7 seasons, the Seaver family invited themselves into living rooms across America, and somewhere between the laugh track and the life lessons, they became family. But the cameras stopped rolling a long time ago, and real life, as it always does, moved on without a script. So, where did they all go? Who is still standing? And who did we lose along the way? Hi, my name is Edward, and this is Screen Legends, the channel where we slow down, look back, and honor the faces that shaped the way a generation watched television. If Growing Pains meant something to you, stay with me, because this one is worth every minute. Alan Thicke, Jason Seaver. At 48 years old, when Growing Pains first aired, Alan Thicke stepped into the role of doctor. Jason Seaver, with the easy confidence of a man who had spent years in front of a camera and knew exactly how to make it love him back. And it did. Oh, it absolutely did. Jason Seaver was a psychiatrist, a father of 3, eventually 4, and the kind of television dad who managed to be both genuinely funny and genuinely wise without ever making either quality feel forced. He was the anchor of the Seaver household, the steady presence around whom the chaos of adolescence and ambition and family life swirled. When Mike pushed too far, when Carol retreated into her own head, when Ben needed someone to just sit with him for a moment, Jason was there. Not with lectures, not with ultimatums, but with that particular brand of warm, knowing patience that made you wish your own father had a psychiatry degree and better timing. What made Alan Thicke's performance so enduring was how much of himself he brought to it. He was, by most accounts, genuinely warm, genuinely funny. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone in it feel immediately at ease. He was already well known in Canada before Growing Pains, a successful talk show host, songwriter, and entertainer. But it was the role of Jason Seaver that made him a household name across North America and beyond. After the show ended in 1992, Alan Thicke continued working steadily in television, appearing in dozens of projects and never fully stepping away from the spotlight he had earned. He also had the rather surreal experience of watching his son, Robin Thicke, become one of the biggest pop stars on the planet, which, if you think about it, is a very Jason Seaver thing to have happen to you. Of course your kid became famous, of course. And then, on December 13th, 2016, Alan Thicke suffered an aortic rupture while playing hockey with his son, Carter. He was 69 years old. He was rushed to hospital and did not survive. The loss was felt immediately and deeply, not just by his family and friends, but by an entire generation of viewers who had grown up with him in their living rooms. There were no warning signs, no long illness to brace against. He was just gone. And in the days that followed, the tributes poured in from everywhere, from former castmates, from celebrities, from fans who simply wanted to say that he had mattered to them. He had. He still does. Alan Thicke was one of the warmest presences in the history of American family television, and the hole his passing left has never quite been filled. Some chairs, once emptied, stay that way. Joanna Kerns, Maggie Seaver. At 35, when she first appeared as Maggie Seaver, Joanna Kerns brought to the role something that could have easily been overlooked in a show built around a psychiatrist husband and a house full of scene-stealing children. She brought the glue. The quiet, essential, absolutely irreplaceable glue that holds a family together when everything and everyone around it is in motion. Maggie Seaver was a television journalist who had put her career on hold to raise her children, and then, when Growing Pains began, was returning to the workforce with the energy of someone who had been patient for a very long time and was now absolutely done being patient. She was sharp, she was funny. She had a marriage that felt genuinely equal, which in 1985 was more radical than it sounds. And she had a warmth that radiated from the screen in a way that made you believe, completely and without question, that she loved every chaotic member of her family with every fiber of her being. Joanna Kerns was not a newcomer when she joined the cast. She had worked steadily in television for years before Growing Pains came along. But it was Maggie Seaver who gave her a platform wide enough to show everything she could do. And she did not waste a single episode of it. After the show concluded, she did something that a lot of people who spend years in front of a camera eventually realize they want to do. She moved behind it. Joanna Kerns became a director, building a second career in television production that has proven to be both substantial and lasting. She has directed episodes of some of the most respected dramatic series in recent television history, earning a reputation as a filmmaker with a sure hand and a deep understanding of how stories work from the inside. Today, Joanna Kerns is 68 years old. She remains active in the industry, continuing to direct and occasionally appear on screen when a role genuinely interests her. Her net worth is estimated at around $14 million, built through decades of work both in front of and behind the camera. She is, by every account, exactly the kind of person you would hope Maggie Seaver would turn out to be. Steady, accomplished, still very much in the room. Kirk Cameron, Mike Seaver. Let's be honest with each other for a moment. If you were a certain age in the late 1980s, Kirk Cameron was not just a television character. He was a phenomenon. He was the poster on the wall. He was the reason certain households had their television sets turned on and tuned to ABC on a Tuesday night, with a dedication that bordered on spiritual, which is, as it turns out, somewhat prophetic. At 15 years old, when Growing Pains premiered, Kirk Cameron stepped into the role of Mike Seaver, the oldest Seaver child, the charming schemer, the boy whose charisma was so effortless, it sometimes seemed unfair to everyone else in the scene. Mike was not the student Carol was. He was not the sweet innocent that Ben was. He was the kid who talked his way out of everything, who had an angle for every situation, and who somehow always landed on his feet despite every reasonable prediction that he would not. He was irresistible, and Kirk Cameron played him with a natural ease that made the whole thing look absolutely effortless. By the time he was 18, Kirk Cameron was one of the most recognizable young actors in America. Fan mail arrived by the truckload. Tiger Beat magazine practically built an additional wing in his honor. He was, without any exaggeration, a full-blown teenage superstar at a moment when that category of celebrity carried genuine cultural weight. And then, something happened. Something quiet at first, and then less quiet. In his late teens, Kirk Cameron underwent a profound religious conversion that would reshape not just his personal life, but his entire relationship with his career. He became a committed evangelical Christian, and that commitment began to influence the show in ways that eventually became very difficult to ignore. He objected to certain storylines. He had concerns about the values being portrayed. He requested changes, and the production, which had a show to make and a schedule to keep, navigated all of this with varying degrees of success. When Growing Pains ended in 1992, Kirk Cameron stepped away from mainstream Hollywood almost entirely. He went on to appear in a series of Christian films, most notably the Left Behind series and Fireproof, which became one of the most successful independent Christian films ever made. He also co-created and hosted a long-running evangelical ministry program. He has been, by every available measure, exactly who he decided to become, a man who chose his convictions over his career and has never publicly expressed regret about that choice. Today, Kirk Cameron is 55 years old. He is married to actress Chelsea Noble, whom he met on the set of Growing Pains, and they have 6 children together. His net worth is estimated at around $20 million. He remains active in Christian media and outreach, continuing to produce and appear in faith-based content. Whether or not his choices resonate with you personally, there is something genuinely rare about a person who walks away from the kind of fame he had and does not spend the next 30 years missing it. Tracey Gold, Carol Seaver. There is a particular kind of character in family television that the industry often gets wrong. The smart one, the studious one, the child who is defined entirely by their grades and their ambition, and their slightly exasperated relationship with a sibling who coasts on charm alone. It is a role that can easily become a cartoon, and in the hands of a lesser performer, Carol Seaver might have been exactly that. Tracey Gold did not let that happen. At 16, when Growing Pains began, Tracey Gold brought to Carol Seaver a depth and a humor and a genuine emotional complexity that elevated every scene she was in. Carol was brilliant, yes. She was also vulnerable. She cared what people thought of her. She wanted things she could not always articulate. She was, beneath all the academic achievement, a teenage girl trying to figure out who she was in a world that had already decided to label her. Tracey Gold understood all of that, and she played every layer of it with a precision that made Carol one of the most beloved characters the show produced. But behind the scenes, something was happening that the audience did not see. Beginning in the early years of the series, Tracey Gold was privately battling anorexia. By 1992, her condition had become severe enough that production on Growing Pains was halted, and she stepped away from the show to focus on her health and recovery. She was 23 years old. She had spent years in the public eye, under the particular pressure that the entertainment industry applies to young women's bodies with a casualness that is frankly staggering, and she had reached a point where stepping away was not a choice so much as a necessity. What followed was one of the most openly documented recovery journeys in Hollywood history. Tracey Gold did not hide. She spoke publicly about her illness, her treatment, and the long and non-linear road back to health. In doing so, she gave a generation of young women a language for something that many of them were experiencing in silence. That matters. It matters enormously. In the years that followed, she continued working in television, appearing in various film and dramatic projects, while also becoming an advocate for eating disorder awareness. Her path was not without additional hardship. In 2004, she was involved in a serious car accident that resulted in legal consequences and a very public reckoning. She faced it, as she had faced the earlier chapter, with honesty. Today, Tracey Gold is 56 years old. She continues to work in television and remains a committed voice in the conversation around eating disorders and mental health. Her net worth is estimated at around $2 million. She is, by any measure, a survivor. And more than that, she is someone who chose to turn her own pain into something useful for others. That is not nothing. That is, in fact, quite a lot. Jeremy Miller, Ben Seaver. Every family sitcom needs a Ben Seaver, the youngest sibling, the one who walks into rooms and says the thing everyone else was thinking, but had the good sense not to say out loud. The comic relief who is also, somehow, the moral center. The kid who makes you laugh and then, before the episode is over, makes you feel something you were not entirely prepared to feel. At 9 years old, when Growing Pains first aired, Jeremy Miller stepped into that role and inhabited it with a warmth and a comic timing that belied his age almost completely. Ben Seaver was the youngest Seaver child for most of the series, until baby Chrissy arrived, and he played that position in the family with a gleeful, gap-toothed relish. He was the little brother. He was the scene stealer. He was the one you watched even when he was not the one talking, because something was always happening in his face that was worth watching. Growing up on a television set is a complicated thing. The child who does it successfully manages, somehow, to remain a child in all the ways that matter, while developing the professional discipline of someone 3 times their age. Jeremy Miller did that for 7 years. And then the show ended and he was 16 years old, and the particular kind of fame that comes with being a beloved child actor began to behave the way that kind of fame usually behaves when the vehicle that produced it stops running. It fades, not all at once, but steadily. In the years following Growing Pains, Jeremy Miller found the transition out of the spotlight genuinely difficult. He has spoken openly about struggling with alcoholism through his 20s and into his 30s, a battle that was private for many years before he chose to address it publicly. That honesty, that willingness to say, yes, this was hard, and yes, I struggled, is something that deserves acknowledgement rather than a polite gloss. Today, Jeremy Miller is 41 years old. He has been open about his recovery and his efforts to build a stable and grounded life. He has appeared in occasional television projects over the years, though he has largely stepped away from the industry. His net worth is estimated at around $500,000. He is, by his own account, in a better place. And for anyone who spent their childhood watching him across the dinner table of that Brooklyn brownstone, that is genuinely good news. Ashley Johnson, Chrissy Seaver. She arrived on Growing Pains as a toddler, a tiny force of nature named Chrissy Seaver, who appeared in season 5 and immediately proceeded to steal every scene she was allowed anywhere near, which, given that she was sharing a set with Kirk Cameron and a future Oscar winner, is an achievement worth pausing on for a full moment, maybe 2. At 5 years old when she joined the cast, Ashley Johnson was already a natural, and not in the slightly unsettling way that some child performers are natural. The kind where you watch them work and quietly wonder what a normal childhood might have cost them. No, Ashley Johnson was natural in the genuinely joyful way. The way that does not feel performed or engineered or coached within an inch of its life. She seemed to understand, instinctively and without apparent effort, how to inhabit a character fully, and how to actually listen to the people around her, which is frankly something that a remarkable number of adult actors spend their entire careers trying to learn and never quite do. She was 5. She was doing it without thinking about it. Some people are just built differently. After Growing Pains ended in 1992, Ashley Johnson did something that child actors are not statistically supposed to do. She kept going, and not in a desperate, clinging to the past kind of way. She kept going with direction and with purpose, building a body of work in television and voice acting that speaks to a talent that deepened and expanded rather than quietly fading the way so many early careers do once the original vehicle stops running. She appeared in various television series throughout the 90s and 2000s, developing a range that moved comfortably between drama and comedy, without ever feeling like she was straining in either direction. But it was her work in voice acting that ultimately introduced her to an entirely new generation of fans who may never have seen a single episode of Growing Pains in their lives. Her performance as Ellie in the video game The Last of Us brought her widespread recognition and genuine critical acclaim, the kind of response that is not simply about a performance being technically good, but about it being emotionally necessary. Players did not just admire what she did with that character, they felt it in a way that stayed with them long after the game was finished. She later reprised the role in the television adaptation of The Last of Us, stepping back into one of the most beloved characters in modern storytelling, and doing so with a confidence that only comes from knowing exactly who you are as a performer. That kind of career continuity across mediums, from toddler sitcom, scene stealer, to the emotional core of one of the most acclaimed dramatic productions of its era, is not an accident. It is the result of genuine talent meeting genuine dedication over a very long period of time. Today, Ashley Johnson is 39 years old. She remains active and in demand as both a screen actress and a voice performer. Her net worth is estimated at around $3 million. She is, without question, one of the genuine success stories of the child actor path. Someone who found the runway long enough and had the skill and the patience to grow into the artist she was always going to become. Leonardo DiCaprio, Luke Brower. All right, here we go. If you have watched every episode of Growing Pains and you do not remember the moment that Leonardo DiCaprio appeared in the Seaver household as a homeless teenager named Luke Brower, who ended up living under their staircase, then, with the greatest possible respect, you need to revisit your television history. Because it happened. It absolutely happened. And looking back at it now from 2026, it has the quality of a dream that you cannot quite convince yourself was real. At 17 years old, when he joined Growing Pains in Season 7, Leonardo DiCaprio was not yet Leonardo DiCaprio, in the way that we now understand that phrase. He was a promising young actor who had been working steadily in television and had begun attracting attention for his natural ability and his unnerving screen presence. He had appeared in episodes of various series and had done some film work, but his career had not yet ignited in the way that everyone who saw him clearly understood it was about to. Luke Brower was a troubled teenager, street smart and guarded and carrying the kind of quiet damage that only someone with genuine instincts can communicate without overplaying. DiCaprio played him with a restraint and an emotional intelligence that was striking in a performer his age. He fit into the Seaver family dynamic with an ease that could have felt contrived, a homeless kid essentially adopted by a psychiatrist, and his journalist wife is, let's be honest, a premise that requires some goodwill from the audience. But DiCaprio sold it. He always sold it. He left the show after one season. What came next was one of the most extraordinary careers in the history of American cinema. What's Eating Gilbert Grape earned him his first Academy Award nomination at 19. Romeo and Juliet, Titanic, The Aviator, The Departed, The Wolf of Wall Street, and finally, The Revenant, which earned him the Academy Award for Best Actor in 2016, an event that the internet celebrated with an enthusiasm that suggested the entire world had been personally invested in the outcome, which, to be fair, it had been. Today, Leonardo DiCaprio is 51 years old. He is one of the most decorated and celebrated actors in the world, with a net worth estimated at around $300 million and a production company that has been responsible for some of the most significant films of the last 2 decades. He is also a prominent environmental activist, a commitment he has maintained with a seriousness that goes well beyond the typical celebrity cause. He got his start under a staircase in Brooklyn, and that is a sentence that will never not be wonderful. Julie McCullough, Julie Costello. At 23, when she joined Growing Pains as Julie Costello, Mike Seaver's girlfriend and eventual fiancée, Julie McCullough brought a warmth and a natural likability to a role that was, structurally speaking, one of the more thankless positions a recurring character can occupy on a family sitcom. The love interest. The one who has to be interesting enough to justify her presence without ever threatening to outshine the lead. She managed it gracefully. Julie Costello felt like a real person. Someone with her own interiority and her own set of values. And the chemistry between her character and Mike Seaver was easy and believable in a way that the audience responded to with genuine affection. And then she was written off the show. And the reason she was written off the show became one of the most discussed controversies in late 1980s television. Kirk Cameron, by this point deep into his evangelical conversion, objected to the fact that Julie McCullough had previously posed for Playboy magazine. He reportedly requested that she be removed from the show. The production ultimately complied. Julie McCullough lost her job, and the story, when it became public, sparked a conversation about power and religion and workplace dynamics that has never entirely gone away. It is worth sitting with that for a moment without rushing past it. A young woman lost her professional position because of a personal choice she had made about her own body, at the request of a colleague whose objection was rooted in his personal religious beliefs. That is what happened. How one feels about it probably depends a great deal on who one is and what one values, but it happened. After leaving Growing Pains, Julie McCullough continued working in television and film, building a modest but steady career across various projects. She also became a stand-up comedian, a pivot that speaks to a resilience and a sense of humor about life's less predictable turns, that is, in its own way, quietly admirable. Today, Julie McCullough is 60 years old. She remains active in entertainment, continuing to perform stand-up comedy and appearing in occasional television and film projects. Her net worth is estimated at around $1 million. She has spoken about the circumstances of her departure from Growing Pains, with a frankness and a lack of bitterness that is more generous than many people in her position might have managed. That generosity of spirit is its own kind of grace. And so, here we are, at the end of a journey back through time, back through a Brooklyn brownstone that never actually existed, but somehow always felt like home. Growing Pains was not a perfect show. No show that runs for 7 seasons and navigates the particular turbulence of its cast's personal lives was ever going to be perfect. But it was something more valuable than perfect. It was real, in the way that the best television is real, not realistic exactly, but emotionally true. It understood that families are held together, not by the absence of conflict, but by the stubborn daily decision to keep showing up for each other anyway. Alan Thicke is gone, and that loss has not softened with time the way some losses eventually do. He was one of the genuinely warm ones. The world has fewer of those than it needs, but the others are here, still working, still building, still carrying their stories forward into a world that has changed so much since 1985 that sometimes it barely resembles the one those photographs snapped into place in that opening montage. That theme song asked us to show a little faith. There's magic in the night. It turns out that was not just a lyric, it was a promise. Thank you for watching Screen Legends. I'm Edward, and I will see you in the next one.